Welcome back to 8 Cubes. I am joined by Smiles, SMLZ, aka Smiz of Snap Academy at Snap Academy YT. A lot of people requested him back, and we have brought him back to talk about all of the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap, starting with Tarantula, the card coming out on Tuesday, a 2/2 with an ability that triggers if you have the biggest guy on the board, he will gain +1 power, and he will give 2 cards in your hand +1 power. What do you make of Tarantula?
So Tarantula is a card that kind of goes in this, it wants to go in this like super giant prio. Well, I'm gonna slam a Wilson Fisk, I'm gonna slam Kraglin, all that stuff like that. I don't think he quite sticks the landing, though. My biggest worry is that you're so reliant on having Kraglin on 3 to follow up this guy if you really want the highest power card, just because of the fact that he's a 2/2. And also, there's like, you can run Hydra Bob in the deck, you can run Spider-Man Brand New Day in the deck to really get like, okay, I'm getting at least 3 power when I play this guy, so I'm going to have at least a 3 power card. And then the biggest question kind of becomes, okay, I'm making too much of my deck like pretty low curve. Do I even have like any heavy hitters anymore? So I think that this card, it's solid. I don't think it's a bad card per se, but I think it's a card that unfortunately is releasing into the one of the most stacked areas of the game, which is basically stat 2 drops, like insane competition. Cable's a 2/4 that draws a card, and he's not even really in that top level competition there. I don't think Tarantula's going to kind of make the bar there. I think it's going to be a card that is solid. Like, I don't know if you'd necessarily regret spending 6,000 tokens on him. I think you'll get use out of him. But it's certainly not a card that I think is going to be like super meta. My guess is that this is going to be the Namorita of this season, where like it's a solid card. It's decent. You can put in a bunch of stuff, but I don't think it's going to be that good.
I do think that this card is very much a Kraglin card. Like, yeah. Kraglin, and also I think a bit of a Spider-Man Brand New Day card, because he allows your Kraglin to be their Kraglin and then moves around a little bit more. That kind of stuff does seem kind of appealing to me. There's a lot of good things that a deck like that can do with this, but I think he's either a little bit too weak on the front end or a little bit too weak on the back end for me to feel really good about him, basically, because he's never going to trigger himself unless your opponent just doesn't play a card for 2 turns, which, you know, there are decks that do that, but it's not exactly a reliable method. And if you try to build around the buff part of him, which I think might trick people into building him the wrong way, you kind of can't. You kind of only get to play him in a deck that is always triggering him a lot of the time. And the buff decks are really bad at that. They are never playing cards that have power on the board.
I mean, the best buff enabler in the game is Storm Horseman of Famine, and that card's at 3/1.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the only deck that this is going to get consistent and real mileage against is Captain Carter Combo, but then Captain Carter Combo is just going to put up 70 points anyways.
Yeah, you don't...
Tarantula, 11 points doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I do think that it's possible that this does make it into some Prio shells, because Prio shells are very forgiving. You can do a lot of stuff in a super giant shell where you're just allowed to do whatever it is that you feel like doing, as long as it's reasonably in line with that stuff, and getting extra points is fine. And you'd love a 2/11 if you could make sure you had a 2/11 enough of the time. And that does seem like a place that he could go. It even seems like a place that he could excel. Like, if he was 1 point higher, I'd be like, this is a great card. But he's a 2/2, and he's not a 2/3.
Absolutely. 2/3 is the break point on 2s, and if you aren't there, then you got to really be doing something to make you worthwhile to run.
Next up is Tombstone, already out. Seems like the best card Destroy has gotten in a very long time, but that also does seem like a pretty low bar. Tombstone, a 2/3 on reveal that destroys your weakest card at the locations that he was not played at your other locations.
Yeah, so the first thing that I thought of when I saw this card was Muse, because Muse is at 3/12 if you can get him fully online, and we talk a lot here about, oh, Wilson Fisk is at 3/9, he's so strong. Kraglin is at 3/9, he's so strong. Yeah. Well, this is at 3/12. That's 3 points higher than that. That's really, really good. Problem is, it has such a hard effect to kind of turn on, especially because we only had one global destroyer, effectively, that isn't like actual destroyer in Killmonger, and only having one enabler or something makes something really, really hard to trigger. With Tombstone giving kind of 2 enablers to get the Muse fully online, I think that this card is really going to make a splash and see, like, a noticeable uptick in Destroy. I don't think it's going to be a null death build of Destroy. I don't think we're going back to 2023 with that. However, I do think that there's going to be some kind of mid-range. I am kind of a believer in like a Dormammu, maybe having the Dormammu Jug stuff. Jug is really good in this meta game. You're now all of a sudden adding a 312 to that. You can run X23 for some extra energy. I think that there's something there as like a kind of like a mid-range Destroy, which feels weird to say, as Destroy is kind of like the quintessential combo deck. But I definitely think that Tombstone opens up so many more avenues for Destroy that I think every player should get him. He's just really good, and he's also free.
Yes, there is that to be said for him, that he is the reward for Team Clash. I will say, I am a big believer that Null is holding the Destroy archetype back, that the focus on Null Zola combo style of Destroy holds the archetype back from actually ever developing, like whether it should be a good enough points package to compare to something like Victoria Hand or Phantom X or the Venus decks that are able to play things like, a Mobius and a Juggernaut, because they are not the things that are comboing the highest. With Destroy, it's a little bit awkward though, because Destroy can be one of the decks that's comboing the highest. And so it feels weird to give up on that potential and just accept being just another mid-range deck. But I do think that's the path forward for the archetype, playing things like Muse, playing things like Juggernaut, and then just the rest of it is value. And I think there is something to be said for trying to make the deck smaller. The problem is whenever you try to make the deck smaller, other people playing the Tombstone version with Null are just unbeatable for you. Destroy polices itself out of being a good deck by virtue of the dynamics that Destroy mirrors have. They are so incentivized to be more and more like a combo deck and less like a functioning deck, because every mirror just gets won by the deck going taller. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic that, in my opinion, is sort of keeping Destroy in the dark ages, so to speak.
One of the interesting things that I think can kind of go against that is the fact that with these Killmonger, Tombstone, Muse version to Destroy, what are you destroying? You're destroying like 1 power X23s, 1 power Squirrels. The Null isn't actually getting that big. And I think this is the first time that we actually have a deck that could break that Destroy mirror trend. And also, I've been dancing around it. The number one best thing about this card is that it dodges Cosmo. Cosmo is no longer a hard stop to your Destroy lane. This card just lets you get in there. Words can't really say like how big that is for Destroy. It makes like an actually playable deck, considering we're in a metagame with as much Cosmo as we are.
Which is weird, because we're not actually in a metagame with like historically a large amount of Cosmo, but just any amount of it where you're setting it up is just like, oh, I lose. GG. Nice.
Yeah.
Next up, Spider-Man Brand New Day, who is just flat out really good. This is just the most really good card I've ever seen in my entire life. The closest thing we have to a generically applicable one drop. He's good in decks that move stuff. He's good in decks that buff stuff. He's good in decks that don't do any of that stuff and would just like to play a one drop. Nightcrawler, eat your heart out. Wallcrawler is here. Anything in particular stand out about Brand New Day, or is he just like floor better Nightcrawler, ceiling way better Nightcrawler?
Oftentimes, people talk about cards necessarily being pushed, like people like, okay, go play this card. We're gonna give this a ton of points. I think that kind of happened to Kraglin before this card, where it's like, okay, we're gonna give this guy 1 point. We're gonna give this guy 1 point. What will it take for you to play this card? Spider-Man Brand New Day got all of that before release. I mean, it's a 1/4 that moves twice. If it was a 1/2 that moved twice, it would still see a ton of play. If it was just a 1/4 that moved, I mean, Nightcrawler was a 1/3 that moved, and he saw a ton of play. This card is absolutely ridiculous. It is the closest thing to a free slot that we have in the game. Like, you can just put this guy in honestly, like any deck.
Do you want to play a one drop?
Yeah. That's the question.
Yeah.
It's like that good.
Yeah.
Insane. If you haven't bought the season pass, it's pretty good this month.
Yeah. This is it's one of those things where it's like, I totally understand why it isn't a 1/1, because I know it'd be easy to say, like, if it was a 1/1, it would still be busted, but I don't know that that's true, because I really do feel like I get a lot less out of the +1 powers that are being added than you would expect. Like, the majority of me playing this card is just 1/2 that moves twice, and the buffs almost never seem to matter that much. It's just a guy that moves twice, and that's awesome, and I love that, but it is kind of shocking to me how little he actually feels like a 1/4.
Well, I mean, I play Captain Carter combo for the most part.
Right, but you don't need that 1 point. You don't need the 1 point. You're fine. You're going to 70.
sometimes the 1 point like is
Yeah,
actually
okay.
pretty useful.
The 1 point
I
is
think,
the difference between a 70 power brood and a 50 power brood. Ooh.
I think the card is I think the card is really good. The buffing part, I agree that it like isn't the focus of the card. The focus of the card is that it's movable twice. They could have printed this card at 1/2 movable twice, and I would have still put it over Nightcrawler and Carter combo. Movable twice is just such a messed up text to have on a 1 cost. I mean, look at this card, look at Sam Wilson. There are cards that cost below 5 that allow you to move them multiple times. Madam Web, another card that allows you to move stuff multiple times. Moving things multiple times at such low of a cost in this game is historically like really good, especially when you have the agency to move them to different locations, unlike Topaz. But yeah, I mean, this card is unbelievable.
It's a really, really good card. It's weirdly like a card that I'm like, this is really good, but it's not busted. But like, it maybe is. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it is.
It's the Sam. It is the Sam
Wilson
not,
of though.
It's not as good, but it's the same. Like,
yeah,
this goes in like so many decks.
It's Sam Wilson
so many synergies.
light.
It's 1 cost. It's 1 cost. Sam Wilson. So there's implied a little bit of light to it. It's really good.
It's really good.
It's not as good as Sam was though.
Yeah, Sam Wilson. I think even current Sam Wilson's probably a better card.
Well, Sam is. We could do like a whole.
We could do like a whole thing, but like I think current nerfed 3 times Sam Wilson is probably a little better still somehow, and that says something. But I don't know if whatever it says is good.
It's close.
Yeah,
I'll give it that.
Next up, Mary Jane, a 3/3 that end of turn buffs your cards that moved by +1 power. I have a bone to pick with this card, and it is that I thought it was worse Hydra Stomper, and it is, but it's actually like way worse Hydra Stomper because there are a bunch of structural things going on where, like, first of all, Hydra Stomper counts every move, and Mary Jane just looks to see if something has moved. Second of all, Hydra Stomper goes vertical, and in a deck that really cares about verticality, that has no other vertical options, and Mary Jane goes wide, and the deck is extremely good at doing that anyway. And third is, and I don't really know a better way to say this, but it's the difference between Weapon X and Muse, where like the one being retroactive is just always going to be better, even across like being more expensive meaningfully, and these two have the same stat line.
I really like the Weapon X comparison in particular because what it's asking you to do is very fundamentally similar to what Weapon X is trying to do. It's basically saying, okay, I'm going to take a turn off of my game plan to play this scaler. That allows me to be less efficient on the game plan. I'm getting less total destroys off. That's kind of what it's doing. And there's some scenarios where it's like, okay, destroy Thanos. I'm destroying at mass, so Weapon X is probably somewhere you want to be. There is really nowhere Mary Jane wants to be. I played quite a bit of Mary Jane Venus, and like when you got it going, it felt strong, but you have to run like so many suboptimal cards. Like you can't run Hydra Stomper, you can't run Silk, you have to run like Topaz to get extra moves in. And it's just kind of like, why am I playing this instead of just normal Hydra Stomper? The sad truth for this card is that if it were to be good, it probably needs to cost 2, but then I worry about it being a little bit too strong and giving Move another toy. So it can't really do that. So it's just kind of like stuck in the middle where it's like at 3, this is terrible. At 2, this is too good. Like it's just kind of like if this is 3/5, do some decks ever play it? And the answer is probably no.
Yeah, I like there's just multiple structural things that go against this card ever actually seriously being legitimate. And I feel bad about it because it feels like if they'd done even one of them the other way, like if Mary Jane were the one where she's getting tall and Hydra Stomper were for somehow like diffuse across the board, or if Mary Jane were the ongoing and Hydra Stomper was the one that needed to be on the board. But all the bad ones are on Mary Jane and all the good ones are on Hydra Stomper. And you're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to do this then. And yeah, I do think that like the amount of like time you're taking off from your game plan is the big thing for her. Because you talk about like playing her in Venus and it's like, okay, so I'm taking turn 3 and turn 4 to play 3/3s. That's what I'm doing now. Yeah. And like, you actually like reverse engineer any game you play Mary Jane in and count how much power she actually gave. Like people are like, oh, it's going to be great. And it's like, she's a 3/9. It's like, dude, I could play Wilson Fisk. I could just put that card in my deck. That would also be a 3/9, right? It might even be better because I care more about going tall. And it definitely is a card that I think plays even worse than it reads in my experience.
Definitely. Card isn't good.
Next up, Aunt May, who is suffering more for the sins of everything else than she is. Because I think, like, okay, 2-3 good buffs on her. The problem you run into with her is that, like, the things that get her buffs are not good cards. You are looking at maybe just Vision as a meaningful payoff for both halves of her buff. The rest of the time, it's like, I made my Nocturne cost 1 less and get 2 power, and like, that's cool, but it's not unfair. It's extremely fair. And the things that trigger her, the things that are best to trigger her with, are cards that go with Sam Wilson, Kraven, Batroc, and Spider-Man Brand New Day. And if you're playing Sam Wilson, Kraven, Batroc, and Spider-Man Brand New Day, all of them take priority over her, so the earliest you're playing her is like turn 4. And so you just never actually get to do what you want to do with her. And I think I've seen people suggesting that she'd be cheaper, and it's like, I don't even think that would solve it, right? Like, I think it would just be like, I don't know, what are we supposed to even do here other than like invent a 4/7 that has movable on it? Like, what's the move?
Yeah, I mean, if you made her cheaper, you'd just be like putting off the actual problem and then making her a different problem where it's like, okay, this is a 1 cost that's giving -1/+2. Yeah. Why am I not running this card? I think the main issue is, as you hit on, there's no good payoff. The card is like, I think the card is actually fine. It's just kind of waiting for a payoff. It's like Muse was on release. Muse,
hold on. Okay. I mean, it's been like 3 hours of Tombstone, dude. Like, you can't be like, it's like Muse was on release. It could be like Muse is right now.
Well, yeah, it could be both. But basically, it's a card that is pretty powerful, but there's just like no way to like really turn it on, and no way, or like no reason to turn it on, which is the big thing with Aunt May. Where it's like, cool, I got a 4/11 Vision. Well, my Sam is already Vision, so I don't really need Vision. I'm just getting a 4/11.
My Sam is already. That's actually just true. Like my Sam and my Batroc are already Vision. I paid nothing for it. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Well, one reason why you could be doing it is because at least Vision won't get blown up by Gambit, Horseman of Death. I've seen some incredible tirades on the internet about this card recently. I am typically someone who is quick to say, skill issue about it, but I do think that everyone can agree, at the very least, Gambit is probably a little bit too strong to be as annoying as he is. There's some reasonable debate as to whether or not the nerf that he got actually constitutes a nerf. My personal belief is it very clearly does, because destroying 1 extra thing is going to be worth that 2 points of power. But 2 weeks after they nerfed him like that, they got rid of the deck that made Mobius 30% of the metagame. And if people aren't playing Mobius, the Gambit copies absolutely run wild. This is notable because every card we just talked about dies to Gambit. So probably worth bringing up in that context.
Yeah, so Gambit is a touchy subject for a lot of players. I know some people that have gone on incredible tirades to get this card, try to like echoing out to the developers, please nerf this guy. And while I think he's very strong, and I think he probably does warrant a nerf, I think it's like a little bit overblown. They have started to release like much better higher cost cards. And I know it's like, oh, just change your deck, play higher cost cards. But, I mean, it kind of just is that if you don't want to lose the Gambit. Like, I'm going to get into this with my soapbox, but Wolverine Horseman of War, like, if you just play that card, you beat Gambit 100% of the time. They can't beat you. Like, you just play 2 of those and you win. So
yes, you're sort of eliding the Mother Ascani of it all here.
Yeah, yes. I mean, Mother Ascani is a card that exists, so we got to use it. I think overall, I think that the double Gambits Stardust deck is incredibly not fun to play against. But overall, I think that just like it kind of leads me to like a larger conversation of like, okay, Second Dinner in recent times has definitely taken this like new idea with balancing where before if they had like a pretty problematic card, they used to just kill it. And now they're kind of really taking like slower baby steps to the card. Like let's look at Shallow and Sunlord. Both of them went through like an intermediate nerf before like the actual nerf came. Like Chow got 2 points off his body. Star-Lord went through 2 changes before he got the death bullet. There's a lot of like they're trying not to over nerf cards, but the big positive reception was when Sunlord and Chow bit the bullet, so to say. Is it better for them to continue for like at least like a game enjoyment perspective to actually have these cards continue to bite the bullet, even if it might like dissuade purchasers because their new card got destroyed? I don't know. It's a very interesting thing because I think what a lot of Snap players see a nerf as is they see a nerf as this card is dead and out of the metagame and not this card is slightly weaker. So even though Gambit did get nerfed, in my opinion, it wasn't a big enough nerf to that it just like actually changed community sentiment at all. So I kind of think that it's just kind of like, should we kill cards? Should we try not to kill cards? What's really going on here? Because I know the meta is stale, but Gambit has overstayed his welcome for many.
I agree Gambit's overstayed his welcome, but I also think that like when I look at what happened with Star-Lord, I think that's kind of the worst case scenario where you do your intermediate nerfs and then you obliterate him and then he's just like wildly unplayable, right? I think that I would have rather they'd done like 4 more weeks of minor Star-Lord nerfs until he was a balanced card. You know what I mean? That would have been what I would have preferred there because the end result to me is what matters, which is people not feeling like they got rug pulled. Right? Like that is, I think, more important than 2 weeks of an imbalanced meta in your card game. I think Gambit's whole deal, though, like you mentioned, like, oh, it's a little overblown, but my response to that would be, how could it not be? Because his play pattern is so unfun. How could people not like over index for it? You know what I mean? Like, how are you as a person supposed to respond to all your shit getting blown up and be like, well, that just happens, right? Like, we're not wired that way, right? Like, that's something you have to learn to do. I have a theory that I've advanced, which is like, if Gambit just took a mental note of every card that he would have blown up and added the power to that lane equal to that card's power, if he was functionally exactly the same, except instead of taking away their stuff, he was adding it to your stuff, 50% of complaints about this card go out the window. And that's correct.
I think the complaints would go a different direction into why my opponent just played a 1-9, now it's a 129 because it hit my value. I think that's a way better card. I think you just made Gambit more complainable for like me.
It might be a better card, but I think people would complain less.
I think you're getting a different crowd of people complaining instead of I hate playing against this. It's now this is too strong. I think it's just a different crowd. I mean, when a card is strong, there will always be people that hate on it because it stops them from playing their favorite deck. And I think Gambit is kind of like the extreme of that, where he's like, okay, if you're playing any low curve deck, like you really can't play this. And I think that's probably the most harmful part of the card is it dissuades like so many people trying to do their cool decks. I am on the nerf Gambit train though. I want to see him less.
Well, good news. We banned him from my tournament. Gambit is one of 6 banned cards for the KMBest Block Party number 3, alongside Captain Carter, Supergiant, Arishem, Mercury, and Iska the Unbeaten. I just wanted to get your take on this ban list and like how you'd approach a format like that, and whether you thought I just like totally beefed on nerfing anything or banning anything else.
So looking at this, I'm like, okay, what are the strongest decks that are untouched? And Phantom X is probably the single strongest deck that's untouched.
Yep.
And Multiple Man losing Iska, probably the second strongest deck that's left untouched. My question is, with no Gambit, are we going to start to see Move run around? Move wasn't touched, but Mercury got banned. Does this mean we're back on Batroc? Does this mean we're back on Thing for Steps? What does that mean for Move? The other thing is, like, I'm a combo player, so I'm thinking, what combos go over the top? What combos are people not going to tech against? Is ongoing really good? I don't know. We'll see. It's certainly a lot more like interesting. Where like I can't go to like my default answers. But one thing that I do really like about the ban list is as a buff player, Carter specifically really hurts like the deck.
Yep.
But a lot of other buff decks, like my Submariner deck that I might take, like that deck isn't touched. I can still play that deck. great, but I can still play it.
I will give you, I do not believe that you are going to take that deck. That's what I will say. I do not believe you.
It's fun. I love it.
We'll check back in on this. We'll check back in on this in a week. Last up, it's SMLZ's Soapbox, and he has something prepared.
I'm going to talk about pet cards. So pet cards are one of, I think, everybody's favorite part of Marvel Snap. You see a card, you think, oh, that's really cool. I want to play this one. And it's kind of like figuring out when they're good, when they're bad, how well can you use it. If your pet card is like Rescue, I'm sorry, I can't help you with this segment. Like, that card is just terribly unplayable. But if your pet card is something like a little bit more interesting, like say it's one of like the Horseman release, because my recent one has been Wolverine Horseman of War. You could do something like Polaris Horseman. That's a pretty solid card. Really anything that's kind of like in the, okay, you might see this from time to time on a tier list, but probably not often. I think it's identifying like what the metagame is actually doing. Like, what are the actual decks you're seeing? Not what the strongest deck is, but what are the actual decks you're seeing? You might, because in my opinion, the two best decks are Carter Combo and Multiple Man. I'd give the edge to Carter, but I know people that would give it to Multiple Man. But I don't see those decks most often. I see Gambit a lot more than I see either of those two decks. So I'm like, even though I probably should be teching for the other two decks, I'm seeing so much Gambit that if I just run a fork cost, I'm just going to beat Gambit every time. So play Wolverine Horseman of War, and my Cube-Rate versus Gambit just ballooned into absurdity. Like, it's insane. Like, I'm winning like every time against the deck. And I think that like you can use pet cards to a lot of great extent. You can notice, hey, Gambit's really filling the board often. If I put down a Polaris early and then Hazmat, it's definitely going to hit all the cards that's needed because a lot of boards are getting filled. And if I play it early before the Gambit can blow it up after, but Polaris is still going to pull like the 6-drop which might be like a Scorpion Brand New Day in a few weeks, and that's just going to destroy my opponent's board and they're just going to lose. Kind of like finding these little pockets of like, okay, maybe I can use this here because it's strong into this specific thing that I'm seeing, even if it's not the strongest, even if it's bad into like the strongest deck, because it's strong into this little specific thing I'm seeing, it could be good. Or it could just be you're taking advantage of a powerful card. Wolverine works great with Ascani, and I'm going to put it in my deck because it's another great Ascani hit. So just figuring out like what specifically your pet card does that's unique and that you might like about it, and kind of applying that to, oh, this deck could be pretty strong in the meta. And also, including a 12th surprise card does not hurt anybody. It's oftentimes really good for your cube equity.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been KMBest. You can catch SMLZ, aka Smiles, aka SMLZ, aka Smacks over at Snap Academy YT. And do you have anything before we let everyone go?
Not really.